work? We did try again, or
Yeah,
yeah.
this is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air on our Facebook and YouTube channels and Twitch channels with Troy Hadeed. You can check him out at DoubeJack.online. And then what we want to let people know is we are on Newsly, which is an iOS app. And so you can listen to this podcast after we're done on Newsly, and you can stop scrolling and start listening. Use coupon code GHOST, and you get 1 month free premium subscription. So welcome to the show, Troy. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm really good, Ghost. Thanks for having me. It's last time I came on, we had some technical issues, and we seem to be okay. So I'm just really glad and honored to be here and able to share. Thanks
So
for the
you were
space.
born. So you're born in Trinidad. Are you in Trinidad right now, or are you
Yeah,
somewhere
I'm
else?
in. Yeah, I'm in Trinidad right now, and I've lived here for most of my life. I've traveled quite a bit. But what's funny is that where I live is like in a forest on the north coast, and internet there is short. So
Hmm.
I come into town to get better reception, and sometimes that doesn't quite work either. But
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah. Well, I
yeah,
think I tried to fix it on my side. I boosted my signal, but
yeah,
so I was reading in your bio, and you said you wrote your first letter to the editor at age 10. You've taught yoga internationally for 15 years. You've founded several successful businesses, including a hemp store, a waste oil recycling business, and a yoga studio. And
yeah,
you walked coast to coast across Central America. You navigated the world on a ship, and you've been trying to make the most of the human experience, and you want to help others because you're a social entrepreneur. That's what you would call yourself, right?
yeah. Among everything, other things, but definitely from a entrepreneurial standpoint, anything that I step into, I have to know that there's going to be a positive impact on society.
Hmm.
That social impact has to go above profit always to me,
Hmm.
and sometimes profit takes a hit, and so my definition of
Yeah.
a successful business is not always, maybe it's not always financially successful, but it's energetically successful.
Yeah, well, being a
Yeah,
musician, a lot of times what we do is like it's not commercially it's successful a lot of the times.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
of
like
course.
and being a musician, like it's really like an artistic thing. We do it because we love it, and if it works,
Yeah,
that's fine. But we're not going to stop doing it. So I can get I has the same kind of mindset. We're doing it because we believe in what we're working on. We believe the
yeah,
project that we're working on, whether it resonates with people or not, and that kind of could be like the profitability, whether we make a profit or not. We still had a good
yeah.
time putting it together.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, Ghost, like now having spent 4 years, well, 3 years writing a book and now finalizing that book and crafting it to get to market, I have a whole new respect for artists of all kinds.
Yeah,
Because, to put all your energy and soul and everything you have into something without knowing what's going to come of it, without knowing whether someone's ever going to read your book or listen to your song, or whether you'll even get paid $1. Like there's no guaranteed reward. But to be an artist is to put your entire being into something without knowing. And I have a whole new respect for artists on a whole.
a lot of it is because we love to do it. Like one thing, I'm a keyboardist, right? And so
Yeah,
I've been playing keyboard since I was like 17. I'm 55.
yeah,
And I've been in bands and all kinds of things. And I just decided that I was going to create this thing called Phantom Electric Ghost, which
yeah,
basically took all the things I'd ever done and then became my vehicle to just write music all by myself, kind of like a Stevie Wonder or a Prince. I just put everything together. And I had been in
yeah,
bands, and I decided I was going to take ownership and I was going to write everything. I'm going to play everything. I'm going to produce everything, and became this kind of project. And then in order to actually support it, I started podcasting, and
yeah,
then the podcasting actually keeps my music going because, like you said, you can work on something for 2 years and you have no idea whether you're gonna make money. Where
Yeah,
on my podcast, I'm actually monetized, and I've got ways to monetize myself with sponsors and stuff. So I'm able to make money doing that, and then it helps support my other enterprise. So you'll notice that a lot of musicians and artists, we have day jobs or other jobs that
yeah,
support what we do, unless we're like, you know, somehow we have a trust fund.
yeah. Yeah, I got a little glimpse into the world of artists, and it brought out so much respect.
Well, the old
Yeah,
systems used to, like, studios would support us, right? If
yeah,
you went back in the '60s and the '70s, even the '80s, like, artists would get signed. But the thing is, it was kind of like a trap because they give you they give you like a stipend, they give you your money, right? They'd say,
yeah,
but you'd have to make it back. So basically,
yeah,
they give you a contract and it sounds good, right? It could be millions of dollars. But what happens in that contract is that if you don't recoup that, you don't get paid again.
yeah,
So an
yeah,
artist might come in as a kid, as 17 or 18 in a young band, and they get $2 million, but then they spend $4 million and they never earn the $2 million, so they never get paid again.
yeah. And now, well, what I'm learning about now is the whole literary world, and now, from what I understand, it's so very similar because it's like you want a traditional publishing deal, right? Because they pay you up front and they take your rights, and then you get royalties if you recover that investment for them.
Yeah,
But then there's now self-publishing, which is the market is changing so much that if you can create a product self-publish and market it yourself, that the financial rewards could be even more promising than a traditional
yeah.
deal.
Oh, yeah, because the financial reward, like on the old studio system, sometimes you only got 30% of what the company is actually making. That
Yeah,
if you go out as an independent artist and you put
yeah,
all the money up front, you could get 80, 90%.
yeah. Of course.
So it's the same kind of flip. Like a lot of times, like the music industry, they would do a 60-40 where they're getting 60 and you're getting 40, or it's 80,
Yeah,
20 and you're getting 80 and you're getting 20, and you got
yeah,
like a big upfront pay. But then the only way you make money is you have to tour. You have to
yeah,
tour, and you have to do licensing. You have to do commercials. That's how you make the money. And
yeah,
then within COVID, it was very hard for musicians to tour because they
yeah,
couldn't get into venues. And if they could get in a venue, they couldn't get the venue to the number of people in the venue to make it profitable to even go.
yeah,
You have to actually fill that venue like 80, 90% to make any money. If you
yeah,
fill it
yeah.
20%,
Got it.
there's no point in doing it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been difficult for a lot of artists, but like I made a decision in 2016 to go totally online like the Beatles. The Beatles stopped touring.
Yeah.
They actually became just a studio band. And when they did like Abbey Road and they did the White Album, they weren't touring anymore. So they just
Wow.
focused on the art, and they
Yeah.
never played live again because they
Yeah.
didn't like the experience because they were getting mobbed. But
Yeah.
I decided to just go whole hog into just doing online music, online concerts, online festivals, and podcasting. And I
Yeah.
used to go to New York and go to Boston, but my overhead was expensive. I'd have
Yeah.
to pay for hotels and pay for the tour, pay for the roadies, and some clubs they wouldn't pay. They'd undercount how many people are there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say you're a musician, you go to a club, they say, you see there's like over capacity, and they say there was 500 people when it was like 1,200.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
tried to, cut you on it. So it's a
Yeah.
cutthroat business. So you always got
Mm-hmm.
to be careful. Like is your distributor really giving you your real numbers
Yeah. Yeah.
in anything? If you're a musician or an artist or
Yeah.
even like in the movies, like when that gets distributed to all the different platforms, are you actually getting a piece of that money or are you not getting a piece of that money? It really
Yeah. Yeah.
depends on
Of
your
course.
contract.
Yeah. And then
And
from me, I mean, I think a musician. I don't know. I've never really considered myself an artist, right? Even though, even as a yoga teacher, some people would say, "Yo, you're an artist. Like what
Yeah,
you
that
do
is
is
an art.
art,
Art. Yeah,
right?"
it's an art.
But I know with me with writing, it's like what I want, and I mean, I'm sure every artist is different, but for me, it's like I want hundreds of thousands of books changing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
for me, the yeah, sure, you want to get paid, but that is definitely not what drives me. What drives me is that I know this book has the potential to change lives, and to impact people. And that above all is what drives me. Absolutely. I don't know if a
So do you have
musician
like
is
a
the same.
yeah, yeah. I mean, when we
Yeah,
write a song, like a lot of times what we're trying to do, if you think about it, music is very impactful. The Beatles like spawned almost the whole 21st century worth of music, right?
yeah,
Most
yeah,
modern bands will name
yeah,
check the Beatles as the reason
yeah,
why they actually became a musician, right?
yeah,
And so like some bands are just inspirational, and not that they were trying to do that, but they just felt like they should do something more. And they were kind of the original teen band. They were
yeah,
like a boy band that
yeah.
became a serious artistic enterprise, which it doesn't usually happen. Like most
Hmm.
teenage bands do not go and become critically acclaimed songwriters. They don't
Yeah,
become like a Lennon McCartney. That
yeah,
that, so that's like the goal as a musician is to get considered to be like a Lennon McCartney or a Dylan or a Hendrix or, like a Jim Morrison. Like you could get considered like an iconic songwriter that writes the song not to be a number one hit, but to actually have a societal impact, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
So I think
yeah.
a writer like so is your strategy with your book on speaking engagements to do are you gonna do that? Is that how you're gonna push it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. I mean, well, I've been started doing some speaking engagements. I mean, I do teach yoga a lot, and then of course doing podcasting. I've realized is an amazing way to grow my audience and reach people that I couldn't
Yeah.
reach otherwise, right? Because I
Mhm.
am in Trinidad and I do travel quite a bit, but in Trinidad's like a little bubble, right? So my reach is limited unless I actually go out and make an
Mhm.
effort to expand reach and grow reach, which is
Mhm.
how I started doing these podcasting interviews. You know?
Yeah, because podcasting can get you a global reach, that's what happened to me is,
Yeah,
I now have, people I work with in Japan and Germany,
yeah.
Israel, like, UK, everywhere, and,
Trinidad now. Yeah,
you know, Trinidad, like, New Hampshire is like a little tiny town, little tiny,
hmm,
tiny place in the USA. I my
yeah,
my music does not resonate in my hometown.
yeah,
My music actually resonates more around the world. I can't get an audience in my hometown,
yeah.
but
Isn't
I
that
can get an
funny?
audience in New York or Boston, but that's the way
Yeah,
the world is today. I don't have to, but 20 years ago, I woulda had to. People
yeah,
would say, "Well, you can't even get your hometown, so how are you gonna come to Boston?" It's like, well,
yeah,
it's kinda reversed. It's like Boston is where my audience is in Boston, New York, or in Tokyo or Berlin. It's
yeah,
so you kinda gotta go to where they are. If I go on a tour, I'm probably gonna go to Iceland or the Netherlands or Australia more than play somewhere like Manchester, New Hampshire. I won't get an audience there, but I could get an audience in Australia. I could
yeah,
get an
yeah,
audience in
yeah,
the Netherlands. So
yeah,
that's the kind of weird thing the way the world is.
yeah. Absolutely. I remember I once took some friends, students up to Canada, and they were so shocked to be like, these people, like, they treat you like a celebrity. And I'm just a yoga teacher in a yoga studio, and they were like so shocked because back at home, like, I'm just Troy, right? And no one really takes you on
Mhm.
too much. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so interesting that we get more appreciation outside of home than we do at home. And when you
Oh,
make it
yeah.
outside of home and come back, that's when you get the appreciation.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting because like, even like, when I come back, it's still gonna be more people in Boston will know me than people in Concord. Because like, the thing about New Hampshire, it's kind of a folk scene, and I'm an
yeah,
experimental electronic musician.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get more people in New York and Boston to be into it because those are urban areas, and I'm in a very
Yeah.
rural area. They're not as much into what I do. So that's just
Hmm.
kind of the nature of it. But at a certain point, like your hometown will want to claim you if you get like a super level of a notoriety. So that you
Yeah.
do have a
Yeah.
pattern where even if people are not into electronic music in my area, they're more into folk
Yeah.
music. If I ever hit like a good number one song, I get some kind of article in the New York Times, then all people then they want to claim me. They say, "Oh, I know the ghost." It's like, but they didn't know me
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah. But that's okay. I guess that's just the way it goes. That's the way it goes. And
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. You know.
But
Yeah.
so are you thinking like your online strategy is your primary strategy? And then if you were gonna go internationally somewhere, would you go to Europe or would you go to Asia? Or would you go Central America? Where would you start with who do you think your core audience would be?
Um, I would probably want to start in the US or Europe, and then go from there. I
Mhm.
think I have a bit of an audience. I think because I have a presence on this website called Gaia.com. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a
Mhm.
Netflix of new age yoga kind of vibes, that kind of stuff. So
Cool.
because
Mhm.
I've had a
So
presence
you're
on
known there.
Gaia. Yeah, because I've had a presence on Gaia for the last 6 or 7 years. I do have quite a
Mhm.
following in both Europe and North America, way more of a following than I realize. I remember once I went to
Mhm.
teach in England, and I was so shocked at the amount of people that came out, and some people drove 3 days just to come and do class. And I was like, how the hell do you even know who I am? You know?
Well, it's the
Um,
net. The net is, like if you're on like the Instagram or you're on Facebook or you're a YouTuber and you're on
yeah,
some YouTube platform, like if you're on a YouTube platform and you're one of the people that's bringing in numbers, and then hey, I'm gonna be in New York City. You'd be surprised. One time I went to New York and I had people that showed up that were Ghost fans and I didn't expect them to, and they were singing my songs, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, I
yeah,
didn't expect it because, it just you never know. But
yeah,
that's what I think when you're an artist or a musician or a creator and people actually resonate with what you're doing,
yeah,
it's very satisfying. We musicians,
yeah,
we kind of get instant feedback because
yeah,
like if we go to do a show, we can immediately see the response to what we created
yeah,
because it's like a live thing that's evolving. And then, I guess when you're teaching yoga, you would get that same kind of response. It's like interacting with your students, and you're going to get that immediate kind of performance response, which is I think
yeah,
is similar from what I
yeah,
can feel.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when I the manner in which I teach yoga, and when I teach yoga, like you feel it. It's like you're in it with them, right? There's no longer separation between teacher and student. So everything kind
Hmm.
of merges to this amazing experience, and you can feel that they feel it. And yeah, that is just so beautiful, in and of itself.
It's
Yeah,
like it's the physical art. Like if you're teaching anything, like you're teaching a martial art or you're teaching Tai Chi, I think that when you're a musician, right? If you're kind of with your
yeah,
fans are kind of they're feeling the beat, they're watching what you do.
yeah,
So as musicians, we've kind of learned stagecraft.
yeah,
You learn a little bit of theater. As you become a
yeah,
musician, you learn to like, well, if I project my hands in certain ways, if I use my body in certain ways instead of just standing straight, like a musician, typically
yeah,
we would probably want to just focus on the music, and then we
yeah,
probably wouldn't move a lot, just so we would
yeah,
focus on music. As you become a performer, you start to realize there's reasons why Freddie Mercury was as emphatic as he was, or Prince was as emphatic, or
yeah,
Michael Jackson. The great performers is they don't just sing the song, and don't just play the instrument, they project and use theater and use
Yeah,
dance,
yeah.
interact with the
And
audience. So I would think that's a similar feature to what you
mm,
do with your people, the people you work with, I would think.
it's similar, Ghost, but you know what? Like, I also teach teachers, right? So I certify and teach teachers to teach. And I think the difference between like your art form and my art form, and or the art form of teaching yoga, is what I often tell teachers is my role is to disappear. Like
Oh, okay.
my role, my right. So my role as a, I know in the world of yoga now they have some yoga teachers that are more like entertainers,
Hmm.
but in order to have the power of yoga come through you, come into the room, me as a teacher, I have to disappear and get my own head out my ass, and I have to almost dissolve so I can create as little distraction as possible so that the power of yoga and breath itself
Hmm.
can come through the room, right? Come into the room. And I think this maybe it's a difference between our art forms, which is really beautiful because your art form is to be part of it and lift it up, right? To entertain.
Hmm.
Whereas my art form now is to do almost the opposite, you know?
Yeah, we kind of as a we we try to find like the muse or the
Yeah,
universal key, right? A lot of times I'm a very experimental musician, so I tend to go with the feeling, right? I might
yeah,
have a set like jazz. It's more like fusion,
mhm,
right? So I
yeah,
don't totally get caught up in the original structure of my song.
yeah,
I kind of I kind of feel what I feel for that day, and what I sound like might not be the way I was sounding the day before. And
yeah,
so a lot
yeah,
of it is inspired by the audience. I kind of pick up what energy they're giving off,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm part of American Cherokee and Blackfoot, and I feel like I can kind of pick up energy, and I kind of know. And it's very unspoken. It's like a lot of the musicians I work with, we all talk about what we're do. We just kind of
yeah,
just do it, and we kind
yeah,
of just the crowd, and we kind of just like we can look at each other, and I don't have to even say anything. If I look at my bass player, or I look at the drummer, it's unspoken communication. It's
yeah,
really because we've been playing so long that we can pick it
yeah,
up, and we also feel what the crowd's doing, and we can make
yeah,
adjustments based on the feedback that we're feeling. So we feel like it's a give and take. You know,
yeah,
they have to give me kind of like that positivity for me to feel good. If I get a crowd that's like not positive, I can kind of feel
yeah.
it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So then in that way, it's so much similar in that aspect of it. Absolutely. That you kind of become one with the crowd as well and you feed off of it and you allow, how I would describe it, and again goes like I'm not a musician, right? So maybe this isn't exactly accurate, but I would imagine as a musician as well. Like if you're in your head, you get in your own way. Whereas when you get out of your head, there's something that comes through you and you start to channel something that comes through you. And I would imagine that's when it becomes really magic, you know? Does that resonate?
Yeah, I think a lot of performance, if you even yeah, yeah, that's totally what it is
Yeah.
because, like, I've talked to, like, actors. They're kinda
Hmm.
like they do a lot of ad hoc capability. I deal with, like, actors, like, off-Broadway actors, right? And
Yeah.
they can do one act, and they'll interpret their lines based on the way they
Yeah.
feel or based on what the crowd is giving them, and they'll kinda change the whole thing. And musicians
Yeah.
are the same way. Like, we feel that moment, and one day it's like you are a representation of everything you've ever done, right?
Yeah.
And then what's going on in the universe. And a lot of us as musicians, like sometimes subconsciously stuff just comes through, or it comes from the ether, or it comes from the muse, or it comes from the universe. And if you ask us, we're kinds. Like,
Yeah.
and people will say, "Well, did you know you were gonna do that?" It's like, "No." because we kind of just, if you're when you're a really good musician, you are a channel, and you
Yes,
channel what comes into you and your ability to play your instrument, but you feel like something else is actually giving you those that and really that's what it is. We're not trying to force my mind on it. I'm kind of trying to be open and feel it and then kind of push it out because it's coming in and out and it's very transferent and
yeah,
it's going
yeah,
both ways.
yeah, absolutely. So very similar in that aspect. Yeah,
Well, yeah, a classical musician is like not so much that they read the sheet music. They're kind of tied to the sheet. You get some
yeah,
musicians, like session musicians, they're kind of tied to the structure. But if you get,
yeah,
jazz and musicians or improvisational musicians, blues guys, we kind of go with the feeling. We
yeah,
go with whatever the feeling is, and it changes. And
yeah,
we can't tell you what we're gonna do. Like I don't even know my set list sometimes. It's like I'll just go off and do something. I don't. I was like, I'm not tell you what it is.
yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I actually come from a family of
So,
musicians, and I've never dabbled myself too much.
well, I think the creative effort to write a novel is not that different. I think a music, the way I look at music is like a short story or a novel. Like when you're a musician, you're telling a story. You're just
Yeah,
telling it like orally
yeah,
through your music. And when you put it
yeah,
down on the page, now we put our lyrics on the page. We'll write them up, but
yeah,
it's shorter. It's like poetic. It's more like
yeah,
poems. It's a bunch of
yeah,
poems. Or you could become an epic poem. You could end up writing like a rock opera, and it's like an epic poem. So some music
yeah,
can get to the point where you have songs that are all connected, and it's telling a story over a longer period of time. I'm
yeah.
the kind of musician I like to go into that. I like the games that are kind of like big stories that kind of
Mm-hmm.
cross over.
Yeah,
But I think if once you get into a creative space, whether you're a painter, an actor, or a novelist, you're into that kind of creative energy that you're inspired by something and you're kind of represented. So maybe talk about what you're doing with your book more in more detail.
yeah. Well, my book is called Popcorn in My Pocket, and it is complete. It's now with a final editor, and it's making its way to market, looking for a publisher and an agent. And what the book is about, Ghost, is and I'm sure everyone can relate to this a little bit. I know your name is a little catchy, and you hear your name, you're like, well, popcorn in my pocket. What's that about? Well, it's an analogy, and think of popcorn as all these spiritual insights and teachings and ideologies that we hear about in the world now. And popcorn is everywhere, right? There are all these spiritual teachings and things going on,
Mhm.
and everyone's throwing them all over the place. And a pocket is a spiritual pocket. And every individual has their own unique spiritual pocket. And what I see happening in the world now is that we're repeating and we're sharing and we're reposting all of these amazing quotes or ideologies or teachings, but we're not really understanding them. We're not really taking the time to embody them and
Mhm.
ask a question, well, how does this apply to my life? What does this actually mean? How can I embody this more? And only when you do that and you take the popcorn and you put it in your pocket, does it become knowledge. Only then does it become real
Yeah.
understanding, you know? So in this book, I talk about certain teachings and realizations that I've come to in my life that have been shared with me, but I share stories about how they show up and how they apply to my life, and then hope to invite the reader to ask the same questions. I don't want the reader taking my popcorn and throwing it around. I want them taking my popcorn
Mhm.
and using that to discover their own epiphanies, their own realizations, their own insights, you know?
It's
Yeah,
kind of like the idea. I had a liberal arts education, and it's like the concept was holistic thinking, right? So we
yeah,
read. Camus, we read Shakespeare, we read all this classic stuff. But then when we had exams, it wasn't a multiple choice. It was a blue book, and we had to explain to our professor, did we get it? Did we
Yeah.
understand what he had been trying to teach us all semester? And it's no choice. He wants you to
Yeah.
write an essay to explain that knowledge. And really that's the real difference today. Like if you think about it, like are you going to do an elevator pitch, or can you actually have a really intellectual conversation or a conversation? Did you
Yeah.
get it, or did you just get the cliff notes? Right?
Yes.
Did you
Yeah.
just get that little popcorn piece, and you all you can do is do a little tweet and
Yeah.
just a high
Click and
level, but
share.
you really don't, yeah, you don't really know it.
Yeah, and it's this. Now, don't get me wrong. I say this, but it's not a bad thing. But the spiritual journey or the path towards realization has become cool. It's hype, right? It's a new thing to be and a
Yeah.
new thing to do, and that's not a bad thing. That is an amazing thing. But it's really important that people start to look beneath the surface to really ask the questions, well, what does this mean? And more importantly, goes,
Mhm.
this, I always point this out because it's really important. It's very easy if you give me teachings that show me how to live from a place of love. It's very easy for me to look at the areas in my life in which I embody that and I live from a place of love. But that's not where my growth lies. My growth lies in being able to look at the areas of my life where I don't live from a place of love, right? To
Yeah.
look into my own
Self-criticism.
shadow, yeah, my own shadow, my own darkness, my own misalignments. And that's where our growth lies. And we're not
Well, I
doing
think
that
well, a lot
enough.
of
We're not doing that enough.
one of the things
Yeah,
I've really always been into is Victorian poetry, and there's a concept of the looking glass,
yeah,
where you look in the looking glass so you can see other you, and that other you
yeah,
might be a darker you, might be a lighter you because you're already dark, but it's actually going to challenge what you just said. It's like
yeah,
trying to just be the perfect person, that's easy. You're trying to be good, right? But actually
yeah,
acknowledging your faults, or
yeah,
acknowledging what you don't know, and or
yeah,
acknowledging where it gets a little more complicated, people don't like to touch that. They don't like to go
yeah,
there. And that's where you
yeah,
actually the progress is not in your success. It's not in the things that you win. It's when you lose and you learn how to respond to the loss is how you
yeah,
grow,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
From your failures is how you get to your successes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's partially to blame about the avoidance course is I say all the time we need to make accountability more accessible.
Mhm.
And the cancel culture has done this thing with accountability where that if I lift my hand and I say it's my fault, I get castrated. I
Yeah.
get ripped apart, right? Whereas if somebody steps up and says, "Yo, I made a mistake. I should have done better," we should clap because that shows so
Yeah,
much
but not everybody's
growth.
gonna be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No one's perfect, dude. We all make
I
mistakes.
think people
So,
well, yeah.
it,
Well, people
yeah, so
spend so much time, you know go ahead.
yeah, and we need to
I
make
think there's a lot of
accountable.
times, yeah,
Yeah, you go, you go. Our connections getting the best of us.
sorry. Well, I think a lot of people wanna be a perfect person, right?
Yeah,
They won't have any mistakes, not have any secrets in their closet. They don't wanna reveal that. They're scared to reveal it. They don't wanna get pushed down, or they don't want it getting found out, or and the problem is like I said, the growth happens from your failure. And if you're scared to tell people you made a mistake, if you're scared to
yeah,
admit that you made a mistake, and you spend all your perfect, in music, the example is like people try to create perfect mixes
Yeah.
when the reality is some of the greatest music ever created has errors in it, has all
Yeah.
kinds of mistakes in it. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people today are making music that's kind of soulless because they're editing out all the things that make something a point in time beautiful piece of art. And a lot
Yeah.
of times
Or they
the
take it.
music is beautiful because of errors,
Yeah. And
you
then
know?
people aren't taking risk, right? So it's like this
Yeah,
cookie cutter kind of comfortable kind of music, I
yeah,
would imagine.
cloning.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
you know, and
clone what works and just
yeah, I think we as a culture need to, I don't like the word normalize, but we need to make mistakes and wrongdoings and even failures more acceptable so that we make the acknowledgement of it and the accountability of it so much more accessible that people can willingly step into it, and not to bring up like a whole really charged story, but one of my favorite individuals in Hollywood is Will Smith. And that's
mhm,
because what I see in Will Smith is a human being that is willing to be accountable and own his mistakes. Like he makes mistakes. He's effed up big time. But he's the first one to
mhm.
put his hand up and say, "Man, I'm sorry. I should have known better." You know?
Yeah, well, I think that's the big thing because, like, a lot of times, as if you're an individual and you make a big error,
Yeah.
so, uh, are cautious. They're not willing to take risks because, like, you can make a choice. You could do the wrong film, right? You could say the wrong
Yeah.
thing, right? You got to get slammed. So if you have an opinion, the thing is, like, the thing of when you're any kind of artist, right? You go and you
Hmm.
do something, you're gonna get people that hate it. You 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 can't avoid it, right? And so you can't go running away just because people don't like it. You have to
Yeah.
stand up for like, okay, at this point in time, this was what I was into, and you don't have to
Yeah.
apologize for it. It's like this is a growth, right? This is the growth of a person.
Yeah.
You're gonna have accidents, you're gonna have unhappy accidents. You're gonna make choices where you go one way or the other. You got to make
Yeah.
decisions, and when you make those decisions, you gotta take the ownership for them. Like, so you made a
Yeah.
decision and you did the wrong thing, right? Are you gonna
Yeah.
get crucified for it, or are you gonna say, like, "Hey, I'm a human being. I can make a mistake. I can move on." You know?
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And it even comes on goes into like our relationships, our day-to-day relationships, that we need to give the people in our life the space to make mistakes and stop trying to punish each other all the time when we make mistakes, and just encourage one another to do better. And I have this definition of forgiveness where I define forgiveness as believing somebody could do better and be better even when they don't know they need to be or they don't know how, right? And
Yeah,
it's
'cause
just
you never know.
believing
It's
in one
uh,
another.
I think it's the also think sometimes forgiveness is on somebody else's timetable, right?
Yeah,
Right. So it's like it's like you might feel that they need to apologize right now,
yeah,
but in their mind, they might not be ready,
yeah,
right? If they're
yeah,
not ready, what are you gonna do? Right? It's like
yeah,
if they're not
and
if they might not be ready from a maturity point of view, right? They might not be
yeah,
mature enough to be ready to know
yeah,
what they did.
yeah. And I mean, you're going into this could be a whole different convo on forgiveness and love and stuff. But to me, forgiveness doesn't depend on an apology at all, right? But that could be a whole nother 45 minutes on this. That could be a whole nother
Mhm.
convo. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I
yeah,
guess it's a different perspective depending on where you are. Like, if you fully, like, understand your actions, because I'm a Buddhist, right? So we believe in the law of cause and effect.
Yeah,
So a lot of times, like you'll do something, and as a Buddhist, like you realize, like, okay, if I make this action, this now I could be unconscious of that action, but ultimately I'm still responsible for that action.
yeah,
And so you
yeah,
still have to be aware of the things that you do. And then when you have to own up to, I might have been unconscious of what the consequences were, but I have to be responsible to understand I still did the action that caused the thing to happen.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So it's a different type of mindset, right? It's a different mindset where say, well, I can be forgiven. Like, okay, there's a cause and effect, and it's kind of like a natural law, and that's what happens. And you
Yeah,
might
of
not be
course.
forgiven in this lifetime for what you did.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's
absolutely.
not
And
always
then,
easy to happen.
yeah, and then I agree 100%. And what I like to point out as well, Ghost, is that, sometimes we forget it's easy to point at someone and say, you should know better. But not everyone had someone to teach them better, or to show them
Mhm.
better, or to love them better. Like, no, having someone to show you and teach you and love you is a privilege. And not everyone has that.
Yes.
And if we come to understand that, everyone is simply a product of their experiences and their conditioning, and that if somebody knew better, chances are they would do better. Then forgiveness becomes so much
Yeah,
more accessible.
yeah, my major in college was sociology, which is like the
Yeah,
study of human societal groups. It's not like psychology, and you look at the ideas like anomie, when somebody is affected by like being kind of in a dislocated position in society, right?
yeah,
So they might have parents that didn't teach them, or grandparents that didn't teach them, or in a socioeconomic position that they don't know better because they're in
yeah,
the rough part of town, or they're in
yeah,
the privileged part of town. And in the privileged part of town, they don't have empathy,
yeah,
right? But in but you can have the same consequence in the harder part of town. You could still have
yeah.
two people with less empathy, right, at different levels.
Hmm.
And the different societal study, like in sociology, is like, how does this anomie happen? How do you
Yeah,
actually get disconnected from yourself and society, and then get into certain behaviors that can be affected by crowds, convected? Why does a riot happen? Why do people suddenly lose control of their own mind and get into a group mind? How does that
yeah,
happen? And it's interesting
yeah,
to look at that, because there's a lot of societal dynamics now that we're in all this social media. People get
yeah,
into an online group, online riot.
yeah.
They get
And
into like an online riot mentality.
yeah, and I mean, we could talk for a long time about this, Ghost, but to me, it's also like we have to look at the what I refer to as the concept of identity. Like our individual identity, to me, I won't call it a lie, because a lie is something that is told intentionally to deceive. But the biggest part, the biggest misinformation that we've been told our entire lives is the reality that I am Troy and this is my body. Because if I am Troy and this is my body, that makes us separate. And then what we start to do is we start to identify with things like our opinions and our careers. So all of a sudden, if my opinion is different to your opinion, all of a sudden, that's like I'm being attacked and we're on separate teams,
Mhm.
because I have identified so strongly with who I think I am. But in reality, that's not really who I am. Like, I could be I could go and change. Right now, I'm Troy. I'm on your podcast and I'm Troy. Next week, I could change my name. I could come on your podcast and my name could be John, but I'm
Yeah.
still the same person,
Well,
you know?
the
And
individual, well, yeah,
yeah,
well, there's a whole thing in society, like in Western society, there's a lot of focus on the individual,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
individual is responsible for a lot of things, right? When when you get into more Eastern societies, there's more of a kind of a the feel. There's
yeah,
more of a societal feel and a societal responsibility, right?
yeah,
So if you're an in like, why are you responsible for my own fate? And I don't
yeah,
need to be connected to anybody, and I can do it myself, right? And my opinion is more important than anybody else's opinion. So,
yeah,
but if my opinion is destructive to multiple people, that doesn't matter because my opinion is so important in the individualist society that it doesn't matter if I'm harming other people. My opinion is more important,
yeah, of course.
and so
And that,
that becomes very destructive, you know.
yeah, it just creates all this separation and all this otherness, right? And then we want to know, well, why world is the way it is? Well, world is the way it is because we bought into this narrative that we're separate and that I am an individual and I am this body. Now, when I buy into that, what happens, go consciously or unconsciously? What happens is that every decision I make is driven by the preservation of my body. It's driven by my individual needs and desires. Because if I am Troy and this is my body, then that means when my body ceases to exist, it means I will cease to exist. And for me, that's not a narrative I buy into because I believe that energetically, the resonance and vibration of our choices and our lives will live forever. And that I
Yeah,
will
that's
live
very similar
long
to
after.
Buddhists.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we believe in, reincarnation and our karma goes back generations from the beginning, and you get generational karma. You have
Yeah,
energy that never gets destroyed. The scientific ways, like if your energy and your energy's inside you, the energy that
yeah,
represents who you are or your whole family or whole group of people who have the same kind of vibe, right?
yeah,
That goes on forever.
yeah,
So it's whether you have
absolutely.
that positive energy that's going on forever or the negative or in between. You have shades in between the yin and the yang and the positive and the negative and the good and the bad. And so that is the whole struggle in the energy world is like how far are you going positive? How far are you going negative? How are you kind of blending? Right. And it's
Right.
that kind of blending that is where you have like some things are not going to the extremes. When things are more
Yeah,
blended or more to the center, you can actually have a society that can work. When things are to the poles, then you have more friction.
yeah, yeah, 100. And then, of course, even Einstein said it, science says it, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It merely changes state. So the way I see it now is
Yep.
we ourselves as individuals have to be so much in alignment. We have this thing in New Age culture where we like to avoid negative energy or we like to avoid negative experiences. But I always say about how about make sure you as an individual are in so much alignment that when you walk into a space of negative energy, you change it. You shift the energy of that space because you are so powerful in your right that we can take that negative energy and we can shift it, right? We can be alchemists. And I think that is ultimately what we need to be doing in a world today.
It's kind of like a spiritual judo, right? Somebody
Yeah,
comes at me and you can reverse it, right? So the idea
yeah,
is you can take negative energy and you don't run from it, you run toward it. And then
yeah,
you take it
yeah,
like a spiritual judo and you kind of with your flex and isn't doesn't hurt you and doesn't destroy you, but you have to accept it. You have to
yeah,
touch it. You have to kind of flip
yeah,
it, right? You can't
yeah.
deal with it by avoiding it. You have to
No,
actually engage. This is the problem with is people try to avoid it and then it just builds up.
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
you can't ever really avoid things that exist, right? Things that exist, they're there and they're gonna
yeah,
bite you if you don't deal with them.
yeah. It's like, if we want to bring light to the world, if you want to be a light in the world, you can't just stay in the light. You have to walk into darkness. You have to bring light to the darkness, which means you can't avoid the darkness. You have to walk into it, and not just walk into
Mhm.
it like with judgment and punishment. Like, you're not there to judge all the darkness in the world. You're there to make that darkness see light. You're there to uplift it and shift it. Not punish punish the misalignments, but
Yeah,
change them.
yeah, because
Yeah,
I think the history of humankind has been that people come in and they think they're gonna come in and cleanse it, and then that cleanse
yeah,
tends to be kind of violent, right?
yeah,
Where they don't your point of view is come in and you understand it and you come in with compassion and empathy,
yeah,
not
yeah,
in coming in from a top-down approach is I'm going to eradicate and cleanse it and force them to my mindset, which is the only right way. And that tends to be
exactly.
like in the history of humankind is that like think their method, their philosophy, or their religion is the only way.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
when they come in
yeah,
with that, that's the only way, there's not a lot of room.
yeah. Of course, and
Because you're
boss. I
not
always,
going with this.
yeah, I always talk about this tattoo I have on my hand. I don't know if you could see it there. You can't read it, that's for sure. Anyway, it's an unknown quote, and it's a quote I wish I knew 20 years ago. But it says that I have not come to teach, I have come to love, and love will teach. And I feel that if
Yeah,
we just
that's a
stop
different
teaching,
mindset.
yeah, if we stop teaching one another and just start loving one another, then we might find that love ends up teaching us as well.
Well, all the teachers that I ever found that were the most wisest teachers was like, they would come at the end of the year and say, I learned more from you than maybe you learned from me.
Yeah, yeah,
And a lot of
yeah,
times the fact that the teacher was willing to actually listen to their students and adjust and come
yeah,
up with and not be so rigid that it became a very positive experience where you have a teacher that I really appreciated a teacher that I felt like was listening to me and I learned. You might think they learned a lot from me, more than I learned a lot from them because they were
yeah,
willing to not just think because I'm a young person that I have nothing to bring to the table. And I think if you
yeah,
have a mind that like says, well, yeah, there can be wisdom at any age. And so if
yeah,
you think all your students don't know anything, then
yeah,
what are you
yeah.
bringing to the table? You're not listening. You know,
Yeah, I say all the time, Ghost, I have this in my book, I think. If you're not going to listen to understand someone else, and you've just come to tell and to teach and to talk, then you better stay home and talk to yourself. But that's what
yes.
relationship is. It's about really listening to understand and not assume that we know already, you know?
Yeah, the way now, right. And the one thing what's cool about tech is we have to understand what we don't know. Right.
Yeah.
And in tech, things evolve exponentially. So I deal
Hmm.
with software. And what we came to discover in software is we have never ending improvement, which means
Yeah.
we never really finished code because we don't know what we don't know. So we can't say it's ever done. So we go and we continually update it because we have to realize that we're not perfect and we can't
Yeah.
think of everything that would happen. And then so we continually make updates where
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
becomes actually that's the way you should be. And if you think about our software now, is we realize what we don't know, we
Yeah.
leave it open for improvement, and we run an update because, hey, we missed that and we've or something
Yeah,
changed and we have to adjust. And so it's no
yeah,
longer just in the box and that's what it is. It's a
yeah,
constantly evolving product that never stops evolving, which is like the
yeah.
way life is.
Yeah, well, life is even more so, Ghost, because like if one thing we know for sure about the human experience is that we don't know anything. It's that everything we've been told is just a narrative. Everything we know is a narrative we've been told, and that we really don't know anything. And I think once we understand we don't know anything, then we're one step closer to knowing something.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, in science is like they'll come up with a theory, and then the theory gets, oh, well, that's not true.
Yeah,
Right?
remember it
And
was
it
flat
changes
once.
as you learn. Yeah, the Earth was flat, and then you realize it's not, right? Then
Yeah,
you discover like we had 9 planets, now there's 10 or 12, right?
yeah,
You discover
yeah,
all kinds of like, oh, you can't a black hole do this, and then now it can't, right? And then
hmm
a quasar does this, and well, now it does that because the
yeah,
science evolves, and whatever your theorem was, it gets replaced, and you're not so
yeah,
tied to it that you personally take offense that when
yeah,
somebody says that doesn't work, right? You actually
yeah,
have to be grown up enough to say it doesn't work. I keep saying it works when it doesn't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, of course. And then it comes back to identity, right? Because we same thing. We identify with our opinions and our beliefs so strongly that they become who we are. So that when someone challenges it, we're like, no, like we're being attacked, you know? Um, and I always like to point out how powerfully mind is, because like you wall behind me, if I told you that was red, you might call me colorblind or a lunatic or crazy. But in reality, what if I was always told that color was red? Then to me it's
Yeah,
red.
it's all
It's
perspective.
really
It's
all
all
a matter of
perspective.
perspective. Yeah, yeah,
It's like when you learn
yeah,
philosophy and like you read about Camus and Sartre, and they would talk challenge you and you say, hey, if they the tree falls in the forest, if you did you hear it or did you not hear it, or that idea of perception and reality, because a lot of
yeah.
people just go with their senses. And there's things
hmm
that you can't perceive. Like a cat can speak at a frequency higher than I can hear. And sometimes I can
Yeah,
see, and I've read about it, and I can see her mouthing things and I don't hear anything. And my daughter says, like, yeah, cats actually can vocalize at a kind of hypersonic level that cats can hear. So she's saying something to you and she doesn't realize you can't hear it.
yeah.
Right. And
No,
that then I started thinking about, I was like, wow, there could be a lot of communication happening between me and my cat, and she's thinking I'm hearing what she's saying, and I don't
yeah.
hear it at all.
So not only that goes, but then study this. If there's sound we can't hear, surely there's forms of light that we can't see. And if there's forms of light we can't see, there could be an entire plane of existence around us that we aren't dialing into because we can't see it. Who knows, right? Not to sound like a complete
Yeah,
space cadet.
it's like yeah, no, it's totally true. Because if you think about like dogs and their sense of smell, they can kind of visualize a whole world we can't because they have this
Yeah,
amazing sense of smell that they can find things that we can't find. So their
yeah,
reality is they see this roadmap of all these scents that we can't see at all. So they're seeing this other level of reality,
yeah,
right? And like you said, with those other types of non-visible light to humans, there is a lot going on. And
yeah,
because
yeah,
our eyes can't see, there's microscopic worlds within worlds that are going on right now. They
yeah,
really exist. And there's all this stuff
yeah,
happening. We have no idea what's going on.
yeah. And it comes back, goes to like, I imagine people listening to this and maybe saying, well, these guys are talking like a set of nonsense. Maybe we are. Maybe we are. But here's the reality. I would encourage anyone to really question what they have been told reality is and question everything they know to be true. Because if you question enough, you come to realize that the things you know to be truth and fact are just things you've been told, and you simply chose to believe them. So they became true to you. And suppose we were told something different, suppose we experienced something different, right? Then reality changes. So it's just about staying open to possibility and remembering that we really don't know anything, you know?
Well, I think, being in, a kind of two-sided career where I have to kind
Yeah,
of reinvent myself all the time. So I do have to understand what I don't know and then learn
yeah,
new things, and so
yeah, yeah,
and then as a musician, I'm an experimental musician, so I like to play with, like, machines where I basically have synthesizers that start from the sound wave, and I
yeah,
create from the sound wave new songs, and I'm able to kind of
yeah,
rewire my synthesizer and change how it works. So my synthesizer has a set workflow, but I can kind of reverse it or invert it or just do whatever I want, right? So
yeah,
because it's kind of old school technology where I can take wires and rework how it works. So I can
yeah,
break rules. And what I
yeah,
as an experimental musician, we kind of take what we learned at Berkeley, and then the professor would say, "Well, you know what? You need to take what I told you and then break it. Just
yeah,
just go
yeah,
against everything I told you about rhythm, everything I told you about sound, and just come at it in a different way." So I
yeah,
totally get what you're saying because my whole career I've been trying to be that person that experiments kind of at a very heavy level of saying like, why not do something that they told you shouldn't? Because that's kind
yeah.
of the nature of what I do. I'm kind of an experimental person.
Yeah, there's an amazing reggae musician out of Germany. I don't know if you know him. His name is Gentleman, and he has
No,
yeah, he's an amazing musician. He has a lyric in his song that says, "Learn the rules so you can break them properly." So he says, "Learn all
this is
the
core. I
rules."
mean,
He said, "Learn all the rules so that when you break them, you can break them properly." You know, and there's so much power in that.
yeah, I think that's kind of like I think that's when you get to like a guy like Einstein. Like he
Yeah,
came at mathematics and they thought he didn't know what he was doing, right? He came at physics,
yeah,
and people were judging him at first because like, the thing was he was so advanced he was breaking through, right?
yeah,
And if you think about a musician like Jimi Hendrix, he was and breaking all kinds of rules. He took the
yeah,
feedback and
yeah,
made it musical. He took his
yeah,
guitar and he restrung it and made sounds that nobody even today makes, right? Because he didn't pay
yeah,
attention to the rules. He
yeah,
totally broke the rules. And the most
yeah,
innovative musicians from Coltrane to Hendrix to Davis, what is
yeah,
known, and they invert it and convert it into the unknown.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
or, am I typically on my show, I talk to, artists that aren't well known that I feel should be known. So
yeah,
that's kinda like mission just all over the world and show light on people, not just the people who are popular, but try to get people
yeah,
to understand about people that maybe they should know. And I think you're in the
yeah, yeah.
category of a person that people should know. And so,
Well,
we
I'm
are kinda at
grateful
the
to
end of
be
an
on the
hour,
show.
and I did
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I just love
yeah,
being able to talk to tons of people, and
yeah.
it's
I'm
an
honored.
honor to talk to people all over the world.
Yeah, and I'm honored to be here, Ghost. And thanks for having me, brother. It really was a pleasure talking. And as we talked about breaking rules, I would say this because I know we're probably wrapping up our show soon. But it is Christmas time and it is the holiday season. And regardless of what someone's belief is, one of the greatest revolutionaries and rule breakers that ever walked our planet was a man called Jesus. And I say that outside of the context of religion, outside of the box of religion. Like
Mhm.
this man who came and he rocked, he broke every freaking
Yeah.
rule. He was a revolutionary, he was a rebel. And, we don't often think of him in that way, and we often box him into religion. He was so bigger than religion. Religion can't even touch him. And, it is such a beautiful time of year that I would encourage listeners to connect to who he really was and what he really represented beyond religion and beyond
Yeah, I mean,
what the common. Yeah,
he was such a radical that the Romans had to punish him because he was going
yeah,
against the power structure. So if you think about it,
yeah,
he's the original kind of rabble rouser, nonconformist that some people who are more conservative maybe don't look at him that way.
yeah.
But if he showed up today, I would argue that if somebody showed up with that type of level, that the people who say they love him wouldn't recognize him because they try to
No
criticize him and
way.
take him out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just thought I would throw that in on the note of breaking rules that it is almost Christmas next week and all, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very
But
much,
Ghost,
Troy, and everybody. Yeah,
go ahead. You go
everybody
ahead.
check out TroyHadeed.com. That will be clickable when we fully publish, and so you can go check out the website, and that's everything that you're doing. And I'm sure your book will be on there when you finally get a publisher. You'll be able to get to that from that website, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would encourage people to follow me on Instagram and join my email list. I don't send out too much emails, but I will keep you updated on what is happening. And if anyone has any questions, I am always available.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you very much. And
Yeah,
when your book comes out, don't feel free to contact us to maybe have a book release conversation.
yeah, I will absolutely. All right, Ghost. Thank
Okay.
you so much, my brother. Love.
Merry Christmas. Safe
S-
time and be out there and be merry and just be respectful and much and have a happy new year.
Same to you, my brother, and your listeners as well. Love. Yeah.